What's up, Internet? Yeah! Saturday morning, and making a quick video on the overview and replacement of the tank for my CO2 system. CO2 injected into my aquariums. A few things that you are going to need in order to do this, other than the CO2 system itself. You're gonna go ahead and need a regulator, blah blah blah. I have a 6-way gang valve on mine that can split it up into 6 different tanks. 20-pound CO2 tank itself, and always replace your gaskets. We'll be going over that in just a little bit. As you can see here, turned off the CO2 and having a bit of a pain in the ass to get my gaskets out. That the slip screw that goes on there was being a total pain in the butt to get off, so a little light aggressive tapping. Now, here is the nylon gasket that goes inside. There are actually 2 gaskets. The gray one that you saw earlier that is sort of a cardboard fiber. These are the nylon gaskets that go against the regulator, the brass regulator intake hole. Jeez, smooth coming up with the names there. Gee, guy. But this nylon piece, many years ago when I started doing CO2, I would fail to replace this nylon piece, and it would gas off. Basically, the CO2 tank itself would leak and gas off, and I'd have an empty CO2 tank in no time flat, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. I figured that nylon piece was just a regular thing, was just a part of it. I didn't know. But that nylon piece needs to be replaced every single time that you replace your tank. They cost, I think, 24 cents when I fill my tanks up. I think they're an extra 24 cents, and so I'll just grab a handful of them when I'm there, and that extra 24 cents will save me the whole tank of CO2 driving across town to get the thing filled, following their schedule whenever they feel like it. And as you could tell, 24 cents to drive across town to get a tank refilled is kind of prudent to just go ahead and replace that thing. As you can see here, I'm relocating the CO2 system up onto the table, so I'm actually taking the needle valves apart and pulling the hoses off so I can run them through the table up to a more convenient location that is not on the floor like I have it sitting there currently. A little bit of a pain in the ass to get these off because I use a polycarbonate tubing, which is a much harder tubing, and you can ask my friend BM out there what it's like to use that crappy black CO2 tubing or the blue CO2 tubing or whatnot. This is actually way cheaper than the quote CO2 tubing, and you can get it at your local hardware store. It's way cheap. I mean, here you go. Here's a little bit of a close-up on the needle valve assembly. You can see that nipple there is where the hose itself pops onto, and then there is a slip nut that goes over the hose and clamps down on that and holds it all together. And then here's how the I think we're just calling these gaskets. Here's how the gaskets go in. The nylon one goes against the brass of the regulator itself, and then the sort of cardboardy gray one goes against the tank. So they go in like this. So the nylon one, and then the gray one, and then screw it onto the CO2 tank. Pretty, I mean, obviously it's pretty simple, but you know, when I started out, I wish somebody would have told me that nylon would fail and leak out, but no one ever told me that. So hopefully it does help somebody from avoiding gassing off the tank and just blowing through your product, which doesn't really cost that much. I believe the 20-pound tanks cost me $16 to fill, which is funny because the 5-pound tanks cost like $14 to fill, because it's not really the CO2 that you're paying for; it's paying for the swap out and the tank actually just getting somebody put their hands on it and fill it with something. The CO2 doesn't really cost anything; it's just the action of it getting filled is what really costs the money. And here in Seattle, I use, God, what are they called? A welding supply. It's a welding supply company. I can't remember the name of them. But they will swap out the exact tank that you have, and it's just an exchange program instead of filling up those tanks, which is why I recommend most people out there, you can go find a used system. You don't need a bright and shiny tank to hold your CO2, but you can find a used system. The tanks are what's really expensive. So my 20-pound aluminum tanks cost about $300 to buy some new ones. So as you kind of troll around Craigslist doing your thing, trying to find a used system out there, if you find something for like $100 and it has a tank, you're going to be kind of in the money a little bit, so to speak, even if the regulator's kind of messed up. But if you find some decent tanks for a good price used, they're pretty much always going to be used because you're going to be swapping them out when you get them filled. They're not actually, generally speaking, they're not actually going to fill the actual bottle that you have. You're just going to swap it out for one that's filled and been tested. Generally, because just the testing time and all that kind of BS is, and to have people standing around waiting for CO2 bottles is just a huge waste of time, and places don't want to be spending dudes standing around staring at you while somebody else is, testing your tank for you. So it's kind of a good system that's been set up. A lot of it has to do with the restaurant exchanges. As you guys know, most every pop application in a restaurant and whatnot has a CO2 tank in the back that is actually injecting and mixing the pop that you guys are drinking at restaurants. I don't drink that shit myself. That's too much sugar, man. That's bad for you. That's just not good. Sugar's inflammatory. Inflames your joints. I would rather have a fruit smoothie with some spinach and kale in it myself. But the upside of that is that it makes this very common to be able to swap your tanks out. So you might even live in an area that doesn't have a CO2 swapping welding company like I do, but you could call around to a local restaurant and go, hey, where do you guys get your CO2? And sometimes it's just Coca-Cola that does it, or Pepsi or whoever, but often these are like independent operators, and you can get that guy's phone number and go like, hey man, I need CO2 for my Planet tanks, and he can hook you up. That would be my advice to anybody that is having issues finding a retail spot that is that does CO2. And as you can see here, I'm trying to stay out of the picture frame, the frame of the camera, and work up on this table here, and I'm having some issues getting this set back up because the angle is super weird. I would typically just hop up here and do it, but then my butt would be in the camera, and that would be weird. That'd be a weird YouTube video, like just check out my butt while stuff happens. So anyhow, once I get everything set up, that little gang valve on the side there that's a splitter is what I'm able to dial in each individual tank. You saw me using a marker earlier because I mark the hoses to where they're going. especially if I have 6 of them set up. I can't sit here and follow all the lines, but here you go. I shot a little video of where the lines go, how this works. Going down underneath the 240 here. The 240 is running a reactor, which if you watch some of my older videos, I've shown you guys how to make the reactor. You can look through the YouTube playlist and find me building CO2 reactors. Are really not that difficult. Well, you can see a little bit on the video here. Whoa! As I fire up the pump, it's totally crazy. But once I got the pump going, and once I get the CO2 going, there's a shot coming up here where you can actually see it bubbling through. I've been messing with this for a really long time, and it's something that I can just gauge from a visual at this point. I can just see, oh yeah, that's how much CO2 needs to be going up in there. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that until you've messed with your system for a good amount of time and know, like, visually what's going on. More often than not, I depend on visual cues on what's going on in my tanks and what's happening. But that's just because I've been messing with them for a really long time. Like the 240, like, I know where it's supposed to be at. I know where it's supposed to be dialed. I can just tell. And then also on top of that, I have a pH monitor down below there that'll give me an idea if I got something way out of whack, then I'll be able to adjust from there. But here's the needle valves on here. You can see, the regulator's a pretty simple operation. Most everything I run just kind of wide open and then running to the actual needle valves itself. Here's the solenoid. I leave the solenoid on 24 hours a day. I don't turn off my CO2. I leave it running 24/7 just because I find that's way easier for my systems to keep my systems in line and in check and figure out what's going on. The two gauges there, the one on the left will tell me how much is left in the tank itself, and then the right-hand side is operating pressure, which will tell me what my operating pressure is once I'm starting to get to the end of the tank. Wow, look at that. It was way out of focus. Super smooth. Then you can see, of course, there's a reflection in the tank here because I don't have the rest of the lights turned off, so it doesn't really look as cool. But you can see that here on the 180, I'm running the CO2 directly into the return pump, and then I can kind of get a visual idea of how much mist I want to go and dial it up, dial it down, do all that kind of stuff, and just kind of visually get this one set. The only fish I have in here is the beta, and the beta he don't care about pH swings or too much CO2 in the water or anything like that, so it's not going to be a big deal. Oh, subscribe. Oh, yeah. Fucking subscribe. Oh, well, there's some other shit I was going to talk about in this video, but I didn't really ever get to that. We just talked about CO2 the whole time. Oh, well, I guess that will mean I'll have to make a new video. Hopefully I'll have one coming out tomorrow. Change the format of the channel a little bit and trying to shoot longer videos for y'all. Just yammering on. This is kind of the style of video that I like to do. I like to be able to yammer on, put 10-20 minutes up and on a regular basis. As you guys can see, this tank is coming along pretty well for how long it's been. These plants are sprouting and going buck wild, which is awesome. So we're going to go ahead. We're running out of video here. So, all right. We're going to be holla at you later. Later? How long is this?